Hello, good afternoon. Hello, and yeah, I have a pleasure. Georg, yeah, Georg, no, Georg, yeah, Georg Schweitzer, yes, this one. Well, we look quite similar, yes. So, Neusiedler DAC presentation, 17 wines, and Georg Schweitzer, Weinburgenland. You know him very well because it's not the first time. And hello, Georg, do you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, you got the wine tasting charts, and you know the order. We have 4 flights, and after each flight, you can ask the questions. Is that right, Georg?
Yes, it's right. It's right.
Yeah, I just want to remind you one thing: 17 wines. So you use these spittoons if you have them. Of course, I believe you do. And yes, let's start. Let's start, Georg. Neusiedler DAC, and yes, Georg Schweitzer.
Okay, good. So, hello, everybody. Nice to. I can't see you, but anyhow, nice to have you again on board. Today, the topic is Neusiedlersee DAC, or let's say wines from the Neusiedlersee region. And of course, the majority, let's say the last 3 flights we're going to taste are from the Neusiedlersee DAC. So this is the reason why we named it Neusiedlersee DAC. And we've got a new DAC category, which is for sweet wines, last year in October, roughly. And we want to show you and introduce you this new category as well, beside the very, very well-known red Neusiedlersee DAC appellation in here. So while we run through the slides, I will do a little bit of theory up front, just in a, let's say, not in so deep as we used to do it in the last time, because I think it's more important to discuss certain aspects while we taste the wines, because then we really have a relation and we have a connection to what we're talking about. But in general, we're talking about Neusiedlersee region as part of Burgenland. I know everybody of you know exactly where Burgenland is located in Austria. It's in the far east side of Austria. And if you don't know where Burgenland is, I invite you to come over and visit, especially now the region of Neusiedlersee DAC. You really, really will enjoy. So when you drive here, people who have been to Napa Valley, for example, if you go the Napa Valley Trail, then you feel like being in the Neusiedlersee region, because left and right you have the flat vineyards. And of course, if you just look back, when you drive down to Ilmitz, you will see a little bit of hill, which we will discuss further on during the course of the meeting today. On the left-hand side, you see in the northeast corner of Burgenland, the Neusiedlersee is located. The pink map is the Neusiedlersee DAC, covering about 6,700 hectares. So it's by far the biggest region in the Burgenland area, producing very, very good white wines, red wines, as well as sweet wines, and sparkling wines, of course, which is becoming much more popular during the last couple of years. The blue thing on the slide is the Lake of Neusiedl, and this is one of the most dominating factors in the climate, which we're going to discuss in a couple of minutes. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see a couple of names of small villages in this area. Most famous, of course, at least from the importance of wine growing, is the village of Gols. It's the biggest wine growing village in Austria overall. And then we've got, for example, Ilmitz. It's the place where I'm right now standing, in the winery of Mr. Salzl in the Seewinkelhof. As the name already is telling you, the Seewinkel, a specific name which is even now nailed down in the DAC legislation, because 3 cities or 3 villages are allowed to write on the label the name of Seewinkel. And then you see, or you can't see, but you know, let's say the biggest portion of this region, Neusiedlersee DAC, is bordering to Hungary. It's in the south, it's in the east, and in the northeast, it's bordering, let's say, a little bit to Slovakia as well. So there's a quite close relation to here. Okay, let's go for the next slide, please. While I'm doing some theory session, I think it's always good to have something in the glass. So if you pour the very first wine, which is a sparkling red wine, and if you do have it already in the glass or you pour it, you will immediately see one of the main features of the variety, which is Zweigelt. It's the color. It's quite intense color. It's a lot of purple color inside, and the Reunion. This is the name of the wine we have in the glass from the winery Hannes Reh in Andau. And you can see the picture of the winery there. It's one of a very, very well sold wine in Austria, a sparkling red wine. It's not a sparkling Shiraz, it's a sparkling Zweigelt. And the big difference between the sparkling Shiraz and the sparkling Zweigelt is this one does have really nice, rounded, soft tannins compared to the sparkling Shiraz, which quite often has some, let's say, grippy tannins. Just to explain how the slide is working, you will see it later on as well. On the very low side, you see the founder date, so 2007, Hannes Reh founded his winery. The total vineyard area is about 120 hectares, so it's one of the bigger wineries, I would say. And then you see the portions or the distribution of white wine, red wine, and sparkling rosé sweet wines. So this winery is doing 70% of red wines, which is quite often than the norm in this area. And in a slide later on, you will see the distribution of white wines and red wines of the Neusiedlersee region. Additionally, we put there the information where the wines are sold from Mr. Reh. It's of course in the on and off trade, so meaning for your home market or in the restaurants served by the sommeliers on the tables. Then Hannes Reh is a guy who is really selling a huge amount of his bottles in a big supermarket chain in Austria. You might know it, it's called Spar. And of course, it does have private sales as well. So this is, again, one of the typical features in this region, that all the wineries, they have a quite good distribution of sales channels. So it's not just gastronomy, it's not just private sales, not just supermarkets, it's everything. So this is how the lowest line is explained and what you can read out as kind of information. So this wine, the red one, I think in the nose, beside the purple color I mentioned already, in the nose it's the clear cherry aroma, which normally is said to be typical for Zweigelt, but today we will see as well different flavors of Zweigelt, not only cherry aromas, because this would be far too easy to nail down Zweigelt on cherries. It's more complex, much more complex, and it can really, really deliver a huge deepness of different flavors depending on the soils where they are coming from, and depending on of course, the winery, how they are vinifying the wines. On the palate, you've got a smooth integrated bubbles there. So this wine actually is done with the method of injection. So the bubbles, the carbon dioxide, is added to the wine. It's not a bottle fermented. It's not a tank fermented like Prosecco. It's a wine who has got, on top of being a base wine, the bubbles. I think what's really nice with this one is the residual sugar level. It's just enough on this wine to make the right balance and make it easy drinkable. So really enjoyable, nice to drink. And if it's properly chilled, I would say 6 to 8 degrees would be perfect for this wine. It's really a nice wine, especially today. We've got outside like 26 degrees or 27 degrees. Having a nice glass of this as a starter, and just think about what to drink next. I think this is the really good thing on this wine. So while you enjoy the sparkling red from Hannes Reh in your glass, I will make some theory. So please move on with the slides. One of the biggest climate influencing factors, and you saw it on the 2 slides before, is the Lake of Neusiedl, which is a huge lake. Roughly 2/3 of the surface of the lake is in Austria, and 1/3 belongs to Hungary, but it's the same lake. And the lake is only fed by rain. So you can imagine, we just checked the rain rate for this region here from beginning of this year until today. Altogether, we got about 150, so 150 millimeters or liters of rain, which is not that big. So the level of the lake, of the Neusiedler Lake, is, let's say, below the normal level. But if I'm informed correctly, still a little bit higher than the year before on the same level. So this lake does store or save the energy from the sun during the day and releasing it during the night times. So the vineyards, they benefit from this warmth which is coming from the lake. So the ripening is much faster compared to other regions in Austria. And this is the reason why in this area we have a warm climate. So let's say last week we almost had 36, 37 degrees almost. In winter time, the lake is, when I was young, it used to be frozen every year. Nowadays, it's maybe every second, every third year to be frozen. So we got a difference between, let's say, 50 to 60 degrees from winter time to summertime. And this is a huge impact on the style of wines. But as said, it's quite warm in this region, so we can grow international varieties as well, like Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, which is quite well known to be a late ripening variety. And all the wineries in this region, they don't have any problem in getting it ripe. So you will not see any green tannin on Cabernet Sauvignon from this region here. So this is a big and huge advantage. And of course, the lake, as to the temperature difference between the lake and the surrounding soils, is causing a temperature gradient. And if I talk about temperature gradient, we talk about wind. So I think you can count on 2 hands the number of days where there's no wind in this area. And this wind is beneficial because if it rains, the grapes, the berries are drying up easily because of the wind, and the wind is always the cause for having a fresh air in the vineyards, which is really important because especially during, let's say, end of April times, when we get sometimes frost, like 2016, for example, at least the wind is saving some of the vineyards because it's blowing out the cold air, and we don't have this stuck cold air in the vineyards. Sometimes it happens, like 2016, but unfortunately, we have to live with that one. So this is belonging to the microclimate in this area, quite warm area. And what I forgot to say is, of course, the lake is causing a high level of humidity, which is especially important for the autumn time when we talk about sweet wines. But this will be presented with the wines later on, all about botrytis and how this is developing and how good botrytis looks like. So all these things gonna be covered. Please switch to the next slide. Yeah, when you have been in this area and maybe you rented a bicycle and you drove around the Lake of Neusiedl, there are certain parts of this trail, bicycle trail, where you pass by some lakes, and these lakes are just covered white. And if you go there and really try to find out what is it, we talk about salt. It's really a crusted salt in some area because the small lakes, they are drying out and the salt is covered on the surface. As I said before, these lakes are just filled up with rainwater, so there is no automatic exchange of water with any other source in either way, so into the lake or out of the lake. And this salt keeps staying there. Even the Lake of Neusiedl does have a salt content. And if you are lucky, you can buy Neusiedlersee lake salt in a small portion for a very good money here in this region. And this salt and the soda basins we have here, having a huge influence on the characteristics of the wine. So, of course, the closer you are to the lake, the more salty influence is there. And we talk about the salty minerality of certain wines, in the white wines, in the red wines as well. The only difference to the Loire region, to Muscadet, is we don't have oysters. But I don't know, maybe it's coming sometimes. You never know. But this salt influence, the soda influence, which is as well in the groundwater, in the base water down there, maybe taking up from the roots. It's a discussion if this is really going up into the wines or not, but it for sure has an influence on the style of wines, on the ripeness level of the berries, of the grapes. This is a huge influence and a differentiating factor to other wine regions around the world, and of course in Austria as well. So in Wachau you will not see this saltiness in the wines. In Kamptal you will not see it, but in the region of Neusiedlersee you will see this saltiness in there. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, and then it's all about biodiversity. Buffaloes, you see some buffaloes there. Birds, it's UNESCO heritage region, Neusiedlersee. And it's not just wines growing here or vineyards. It's about vegetables. It's about almost everything, and even the schilf, so the straw in there, used to be harvested. It has got the highest quality level you can achieve, and a lot of people buying this to covering their roof on their houses with this old traditional method on the very high quality standard. So we have a big diversity. We have let's say animals, we have rabbits, we have deers, we have wild pork, we have buffaloes, we have birds, vegetables, everything is in there. So it's not a monoculture, it's really biodiversity, which is important for getting over the years. And here we talk about the history of this area, which is more than 100 years, of course. Really get this special taste of Neusiedlersee wines in this region. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, and this is just a geographical map how we could split up this area in 3 different sub-areas. On the left-hand side, you see the green area. It's called Seewinkel. This is the one I was referring to before. The Seewinkel has got this salty soil types, for example, has got very close proximity to the lake. So the influence from the lake is quite huge on this side. And we talk about 119 or 120 meters above the sea level. So if we talk about sea level, we always compare to the Mediterranean sea level and not the ocean sea level. So we are quite low in there. And you see on the left-hand side on the picture, it's really a flat landscape here. Which is good for the hydration of the wines, as well as to the air influence. On the more eastern side, the orange color, we call it Heideboden. It's a huge area, especially the city of Antau is part of this Heideboden, covered by black soils, dark soils, quite versatile soils, heavy soils. A lot of nutrients are in there. So the wines got more heavy compared to the wines in the Seewinkel, which are more salty and more structured. And in the northern part, the blue part, you might not believe it, but this is still, let's say, the last endings of the Alps in Austria. We call it Wagram. And this area and the soil types is mainly covered by gravels, but sometimes schist and limestone as well. So these 3 different types of soil, making the difference in style, as well as making the difference in varieties planted around the Neusiedlersee area. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, here is just the versatile soil types again showed that you can see how deep they are. On the left-hand side, you see typical sandy, salty soils. On the right lower corner, you can see this black earth and even some red hints in the color, so there's a lot of iron in there as well. And in the upper right corner, you see the white spots of the limestone in the area. And of course, this gives different styles of wines. The limestone gives the kind of creaminess, roundness to the wines. The saltiness is about fruitiness and linear approach. And on the right downside there, with these black soils, more, let's say, heavy, robust, and powerful styles of wine. Next slide, please. Yeah, this picture is just to show you about the varieties in Austria. And the interesting thing here is on the very left side, you see Austria overall. We talk about 65% white wine and 35% of red wine. And on the very right-hand side, you see Burgenland. We talk about 55% red wine and 45% of white wine. So we are clearly the red wine region here in Austria. And especially in the region of Neusiedlersee, Zweigelt is the dominant grape variety, as well as Zweigelt is the dominant grape variety whole over Austria. Although we have to say the majority regions for Zweigelt in Austria are Niederösterreich or Lower Austria and Burgenland. There is some in Styria, but compared to the other two regions, it's, let's say, little less amount. On the white side, it's Grüner Veltliner. And on the next slide, you will see the share, especially for this region, Neusiedlersee. Grüner Veltliner on the white side is not the dominating variety in this region of Neusiedlersee. It's a variety called Welsch Riesling. You for sure know this one, Riesling Italico, Olage Riesling. All these names are existing in the different countries. They are the majority on the white side. Why? Because Welsch Riesling is one of the varieties who can do very, let's say, easygoing, lean and straightforward dry white wines, up to very, very good sweet wines based on botrytis with a lot of residual sugar. And the good thing with Welsch Riesling, always having a very, very nice acidity level. Even I have in my cellar one Welsch Riesling, Beerenauslese 1995, has got 12.8 grams of acidity compared to 250 grams of sugar. So you don't feel that this wine is sweet, for example, when you drink it, especially after a couple of years of age. On the red side, it's clearly dominated by Zweigelt. 24% is planted with Zweigelt. And the region of Neusiedlersee, you can see it on the right-hand side, is about half white and red wine. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. Let's start tasting, and the tongue you see in this picture shows a lot of cherries. And I think now, beside the fact that we're going to taste white wines first, and sometimes you can taste cherries, but it's for sure not the majority tasting we can expect. We will see it later on Zweigelt, but I think we should start tasting with the white wines. We do it one by one and discuss each wine separately. So please pour in your glass the first white wine. It should be the Chardonnay Ried Edelgrund from Wendelin, Winery Wendelin Gangi. Yeah, you can see it. So the way how these sheets work, you can see right now the tasting sheet. You see two QR codes. On the left-hand side, the QR code leads you directly to the wine as such. And on the right-hand side, beside the nice picture of the wine growers, the QR code is leading you to the winery as such. So this is how it works. You've got the name of the wines down there. You've got the email addresses there. And the prices shown on this sheet are the prices ex-seller. So when you're here in Austria visiting the winery and you want to buy the wine as a normal wine buyer, for example, these are the prices you have to pay, including tax. Right. Okay, so let's go with the first wine, the Chardonnay Ried Edelgrund from Wendelin Gangi. So for me, it's a moderate straw yellow color with a golden hint in there. The nose is quite fresh, a lot of citrus approaches in there, a little bit of lees aging I can smell in this wine, which gives a little bit of creaminess and roundness to it. But it's quite fresh. It's pure. It's citrus. It's green apple. Hints of tropical touch is there. So apricots, I can see. But it's clearly a fruit-driven style of wine with a quite linear approach on the nose. Let's taste. Yeah, as well on the palate, it's a fresh white wine. We've got in the glass with nice citrus acidity. You can feel it on the side of the tongue that it's really working with this acidity. Green apple, citrus, hints of tropical again on the palate, and you really can feel it. The mid palate is a little bit lifted, so it confirms the lees aging for this wine. But it was pure stainless steel. There's no oak involved, nothing in there. It's a quite fresh, nice wine. So referring to this slide here, this Chardonnay we have in the glass does have a long tradition, at least a variety. The monks brought these Burgundian varieties to the region of Burgenland and to the area of Neusiedlersee back in the 13th century. And just to mention, they took something with them when they went back to Burgundy. It was our St. Laurent, yeah, and then the St. Laurent was re-imported to this region here later on. These Burgundian varieties, they were used as altar wine, as said here. So it was always varieties for special occasions, special celebrations from the monks, from the church. And today, these Burgundian varieties, so we count Chardonnay, we count Pinot Gris or Grauburgunder or Ruländer sometimes named, and we call Pinot Blanc or Weißburgunder, the Burgundian varieties. Some people even say Grüner Veltliner belongs to Burgundian variety, although I don't share this opinion. But of course, when it gets old, it can be a little bit like that. But these Burgundian varieties are traditional for this region, Neusiedlersee. Almost every winery does have Chardonnay on the wine list. Weißburgunder quite often. We're going to have one Weißburgunder later on in this flight. And the reason why these varieties are so good placed in this area is because I mentioned it before, is the diurnal swings between day and night temperatures influenced by the big lake. So we get a lot of fruitiness into this wine. But on the other side, the gravelly soils, partially the limestone soils, which gives a good acidity structure. And it's always about ripeness, roundness. It's not like, comparing to, let's say, Grüner Veltliner from the Wachau or Kamptal region, where we get quite often a quite lean approach, a citric approach, a fresh approach. Here it's more the approachable wine, the wine which is pairing with food perfectly. So if you look for food combination on wine, this region of Neusiedlersee is the perfect region because they are combining with a lot of different styles of wine. Okay, good. I would suggest, if you have any questions, as Piotr said before, we can do it right after the four wines. I would go through. I can go through the four wines right now. I've got just my second wine in the glass. I just see a comment, especially Pinot Gris was used for sweet wine production in former times. Yes, that's true. That's true. But Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris or Grauburgunder or Ruländer, however you want to name it, is still a quite important variety in this place here. And there are very, very good examples. They even go up to 14.5 of ABV, but you don't feel the alcohol there because we have the nice structure, the nice combination in this room. So if you switch to the next two slides, please, because the wine we got already. This was the wine number one we had in the glass, the Chardonnay. And now I've got wine number 2 in the glass. It's the Weißburgunder or Pinot Blanc Reserve Ried Seefeld. So what does it mean actually? Reserve is a naming or a title on the label of the wine, which is not defined by the Austrian wine law. What does it exactly mean? So the winery is open to define for himself if it's the best wine, if it's old wines in the vineyard, if it's, I don't know, whatever. The only thing which is defined, if you put reserve on the label, then the release date of the wine has to be later compared to another wine. But normally, if you read reserve on the label, you really can expect a wine with more depth, with more level of quality, higher level of quality, and a little bit of more aging capabilities compared to a classical wine. So let's taste this Ried Seefeld. If you see the word Ried on the Austrian label, it refers to single vineyard. So Ried is now the official naming for single vineyard, and it's in the Austrian wine law since 1.5 years roughly. So if there's a real single vineyard, then you have to put the word Ried in front of it. If you just see a name you don't know and there is no Ried before, then it's a fake name, nickname, whatever. It doesn't mean anything bad, but this is kind of a brand for a wine. Yeah? So there are, for example, now looking on Christoph Panotera, yeah, it's a kind of brand name for a wine. It doesn't refer to a single vineyard, but you can see the difference if there's Ried in front or if there's not Ried in front. So this wine, what I like most on this wine, it's a typical Pinot Gris, or actually it's a Pinot Gris because it looks like Alsatian Pinot Gris, Weißburgunder. Sorry, all these Pinots. You can see in the color, it's a little bit more, let's say, golden shaded. Yeah, so it refers on the one hand side to the reserve style of wine. So most likely the berries, the grapes, have been much riper compared to the Chardonnay from before. And the second thing, what I like very much in the nose. Can you taste it, or can you smell it? In the back there is oak. Yeah, there was oak in this wine. Not small barrels, I would guess. I would say it's about 500 liters with a quite moderate toasting level, but there was oak in the back. Yeah, we have these roasted aromas. We've got a little bit of nuttiness, which is typical for Weißburgunder or Pinot Blanc. And for me, it tells in the nose already a little bit of higher quality in this wine, because I think, just from the nose point of view, this is just in the starting phase to be drunk. On the palate, for me, it's much more obvious. It's the oak, especially in the finish. A hint of sweetness, of roundness. It's not referring to residual sugar in the wine, but it's referring to the impression of this wine. Quite nice mouth coating, mouth covering style of wine. Has been aged on the lees, I guess so, in the 500 liter barrels. And nuttiness is there, roundness is there, and still a nice acidity. Yeah, so it's a lively wine for me with a lot of roundness, and I would prefer to have this wine together with a food is done with some creamy sauce, for example, yeah, or a fish dish which is not just natural fish, yeah, but there's something more beside the fish in terms of sauce or things like this. I think this is a perfect combination with this wine. And what was really nice on this wine, I think the finish is really balanced. Yeah? It's nice, refreshing due to the acidity, but still round and soft appeal. Yeah, and you have a lot of pressure in this wine while going down for the number 3. Okay. Good. Let's move on to number 4. This wine, number 4, from the winery Salzl, where I'm right now standing. It's called New Style. What does it mean, New Style? So if we talk about Chardonnay, and if we talk about classical way of vinification in Austria, everybody in Austria at least is referring to stainless steel. Internationally, if you say traditional Chardonnay vinification is normally oak. Yeah, this one has got oak, of course. The color, already in the color, it's for me it's a moderate plus, even deep golden color in this wine, which automatically tells me there has been some oxygen exchange with this wine. So referring to smaller barrels, to barrique barrels in the wine. In the nose, this Chardonnay is for me clearly on the more tropical side. There's a lot of mango in there. There's a lot of pineapple touch there. I don't know. Did you make malolactic on this one? Yeah. So you've got these hints of dairy notes and yogurt notes in this wine in the nose. Quite complex, and what was really good, and I think you will share this opinion, it's not oak dominant. It's just the oak is supporting in the nose, really making another complexity level, another layer on this wine in the nose compared to some other, let's say, more intense oaked Chardonnays around the world existing. On the palate, again, this nice impression of fruitiness together with the light, light of toasting of the oak level in there, a lot of tropical fruit, roundness, the acidity. Here you can feel it especially. There was malolactic fermentation, so it's going a little bit softer, a little bit rounder. There's not this kind of citrus appeal compared to the wines we had before, but there's more this malolactic appeal on the wine. It has a quite mouth-coating structure. A lot of tropical fruit, as said before, plus the level of oak influence in this wine, and especially in the back, I think the alcohol level on this wine it's really nice because it's giving a little bit of warming, giving a little bit of warming, but just so much of warming that I would like to get a second sip immediately on this wine. So really a nice new style. I would not say international way of doing it, but for me, it's the Austrian interpretation of the right usage of oak in a Chardonnay, which provides a lot of drinking pleasure. And the last wine in this flight, referring to Burgundian varieties I mentioned before, is from the artisan wines. It's St. Laurent, St. Laurent Reserve, because I said before, when the Burgundians were coming to Austria, coming to Burgenland region, they brought with them the Chardonnay, they brought with them the Pinot Blanc, the Grauburgunder, but they took back the St. Laurent with them, which is a red variety, and we don't know exactly where St. Laurent is coming from. The naming is coming from the so-called Laurenzi Day in August, on 10th of August, because at least in former times, today it's not true anymore. The skins started changing the color to become red colored. This St. Laurent was brought back from Burgundy again to Burgenland, but it's an Austrian variety. We consider it to be indigenous variety. St. Laurent in the nose, this one, I said before, a reserve category from the artisan wines in Halb Thurn. And if you smell there's herbal impression. We've got a lot of this oregano and basilicum notes in there. We've got berries, dark berries. We got cherries in there. And one thing which is special to the region of Halb Thurn, I always get in a wine from Halb Thurn, it's a hint of cassis note. Yeah, it's so funny. Normally cassis, you say it's Cabernet Sauvignon, but even here we've got the cassis. and a little portion of oak as well, which is very well integrated. On the palate, yes, for me, that's typically St. Laurent. We've got a nice acidity structure, a good integrated alcohol on this wine, a lot of berry fruit, dark cherries, but this herbal impression as well. A layer of oaked from the barrels he was using for this wine. And what's typical for me is this tannin structure. It has got a lot of tannin, but it's a round tannin. It's not a soft tannin, but it's a round tannin, which is really very well integrated and gives this wine still potential to age further and to become even more rounder. But you can drink it already now. It's a nice wine. I would pair it with some of course, meat. Yeah, this would be perfect for this wine. Hairy, like, I don't know. Even some roasted meat could be very well done with this one. So it's for me a clear fruit-driven wine with the layer of an oak impression, a refreshing acidity, a nice rounded full tannin structure. So something for real red wine lovers. And I've got a very, very long finish, which is smooth. And at the end, again, this herbal touch comes again. It reminds maybe a little bit on some Pinots from the region of Baden in Germany, a little bit more full-bodied. It belongs to the Pinot family anyhow, the variety St. Laurent, but still it's an indigenous Austrian grape variety. And maybe it's one of the future varieties when it comes to climate change, because this variety does have one big advantage. It stops ripening on its own. You will most likely not see any St. Laurent with 14 and a half, or 15 alcohol. Most of them are 13.5, and that's it, by the way. Okay. It's just the St. Martin's Day roasted goose. That's a perfect combination for this wine. Thanks for this comment. Very good. So are there any questions for these 4 wines we just tasted?
Yeah, so let me start. If I have to say it's perhaps a question of mid-holiday season, but I'm really surprised. I liked all the whites, which is not very often to me. It happens not often, and that's I was the Hyder is really nice with this. I found the saltiness.
Yes,
and this is it's really different than the wines we tasted before during the other Burgenland tastings. It's perhaps I'm speaking of Hyder, but I like almost all the wines of Salza. I know, of course, but whites and reds. But Wendelin is very elegant, and this is something. Well, this perhaps it's holiday time, but I like it. I find it very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's not holiday time. It's even under normal circumstances you will like these wines, because they're really good. And if you look back the last 5 to 10 years in this region, there has been a lot of movement in terms of quality, in terms of freshness, especially in the wines. It's not that bold anymore as it used to be sometimes. So there was a huge development ongoing, and especially if you look on the price ratio on these wines, they over-deliver. Yeah, I would say they really over-deliver and overperform what you've got in the glass in there.
Mm-hmm. Right. And some comments on the chat? Anybody? Did you like it or didn't you? Upper Silesia, Warsaw, Poznań. Yeah. Last time they make the comments when I said I don't like this wine, and so perhaps let's try with something I don't like.
Yeah, it's no problem. We are here anytime, and if there are some direct questions to the wineries, you've got all the addresses there, and they will share later on, of course, as well all this information to you. So all the wineries are happy to answer any questions you might have anytime, of course. Okay, good. Then I would suggest let's move to the main variety of the Neusiedlersee DAC region, Zweigelt. May I introduce Christoph Salzl from the winery Salzl?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Before you start tasting, maybe, but I don't think we really need to do it. But DAC, Districtus Austria Controllatus, is our Appellation Contrôlée, or DOC or DOCG, whatever you name it. So it stands for let's say a typical, unique style of wine from a region. In this case here in Neusiedlersee, dating back 2012, roughly, it was based on Zweigelt, and dating back to October 2020, we got the sweet wine as well, which is open to any white grape variety in the region. So what you can see here is a switch or a move in terms of definition of DAC in Austria, more to a, let's say, origin-based system where the varieties maybe not becoming that important anymore. It's more about the wine style. But here with Neusiedlersee DAC on the red side, we still have Zweigelt as the defined variety and the defined style in the category of classic and reserve. And Christoph is now running through the next 8 wines on the 4 wines on the classic category on Neusiedlersee DAC and 4 wines on the reserve category. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Georg. Again, hello to everyone. Before I start, I just want to inform you that some of my colleagues are in the chat. So if you have any questions referring to a special wine, as far as this colleague is here in the chat room, we will try to answer all your questions. Why I am here is because I'm the president of Neusiedlersee DAC since 2017. And I think the last few years we did a good job. My colleagues did a good job with Zweigelt, and that's what we want to show you, that we have really high quality in the, let's call it, basic line, but also in the reserve wine where the wines are aged in oak barrels. And so we will go over with wine number
5.
5?
Yeah, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 6. 6, yeah.
In the glass we have wine number 6, Zweigelt Neusiedlersee DAC from Erich Scheibelhofer in Andau. Vintage is 2020. So this is one of the younger Zweigelt which are on the market at the moment. Here you see some impressions of the winery. Erich Scheibelhofer is definitely one of our, how do you call it, flagship
leading producer,
and leading producers here. And quite impressive, his winery. And if you smell in the glass, this is quite typical for Zweigelt. So we have this typical cherry fruit, very intense, quite fresh. And also on the palate, very spicy and also fruity. So very complex and quite interesting for food pairing, for example. You can use it for, of course, for pasta, but also for Mediterranean food, for example, and also for fish. So I would recommend to have a Zweigelt Neusiedlersee DAC for a spicy fish. So with a spicy sauce, for example, that fits really quite well. So Georg, anything else we want to talk about this wine?
No, the only thing I want to add on this wine is we are talking about the entrance level of Neusiedlersee DAC. And if this is the entrance level, yeah, quality-wise, I think we are not doing anything wrong here. Yeah, this is really, again, over-delivering on the promise we do with Zweigelt. And for me, beside the intense cherry, Moreno cherry fruit in this wine, it's the color. It's really black in the color. It's a dense color. Plus, on the fruit side, for me, it has got hints of blackberries as well. So it's a nice, complex, but still, and not to make it bad now, easygoing wine. So it's a nice glass of red wine to be enjoyed without any issue or without any thinking. Just enjoy, lay down, and compare it with food. This is a perfect example.
Thank you, Georg. And also the value you get for the wines in the basic style we call it is really amazing. So they are worth trying. Next wine, number 7, is from Tischler, Winery Tischler, a family from Halbturn. So we go back to Halbturn, where we have already been with wine number 5, I think it was, from Franz Schneider before. And Georg mentioned this typical cassis, what we can find in wines, especially from Halbturn. And I think you have it also here. It is also quite intense in minerality. Mm-hmm. Here we have vintage 2019, so 1 year older, but still very, very fresh. And I think this wine would do well by getting air, oxygen. We opened the bottles around half an hour, 1 hour ago now, and I suppose it will even open in the glass now quite a lot. So it's definitely a wine that can store for quite a long time. Yeah. Very, very spicy. Mm-hmm. I find black pepper, for example, and the cherry fruit on the palate. Nice acidity. Very complex wine.
Christoph, maybe you can add something on the vintage 2019, how it was in this area.
We're talking about very, very high quality vintages the last few years, starting with 17, which will follow in the reserve category. It was quite a hot year, and but not too dry. So we had really good quality. 18 was similar, even a little bit hotter. And 19 similar to 17. So we had with 17, 18, and 19 three really hot vintages. But I think we made it to get freshness into the wines, or keep the freshness in the wines. And with 20, for example, it was a little bit different, a little bit cooler vintage. And that's why 20 will be very, very nice to drink. Not that powerful than 17, 18, and 19, but definitely interesting vintage 2020. So if it goes on like this, I think everyone would agree with the last 4 vintages. Now we have next wine, Schaller vom See from Podersdorf. Family Schaller is the neighbor, comes from the neighbor village of Ilmitz, so we know each other quite good. And similar to Ilmitz, Podersdorf is very close to the lake, and that's why it is also quite influenced by the saltwater basins Georg mentioned before. So it feels a little bit warmer. Maybe it's because it's closer to the lake. Again, typical for Zweigelt, this cherry fruit in the nose and also on the palate. Saltiness. The saltiness, yeah, Georg, thank you. Especially on the palate, you feel this freshness coming from the saltiness of the region. I have also some dried fruits. Very interesting wine and quite typically for the Seewinkel region. Yeah, Gerhard Schaller is also in the chat room, so if you have any detailed questions, you can contact him.
Yeah, I just want to add with this wine, I think this is a really nice example with a very broad variety on combination and pairings with dishes and with food, because it's so nicely structured. It has got the freshness, for me, including some herby notes in there, which make it really interesting. Plus the saltiness on there. I think this will be a perfect match to a lot of dishes, yeah? And not only pasta.
Correct. Yes, Gerhard, do you want to add anything to this wine? Also, of course, Family Tischler. I don't know who is here, but they are also in the chat room. Yeah, of course, you can ask questions and your feelings.
I think what up to now, what we tasted on the Zweigelt Classic side here, what I mentioned before, the 3 different regions where the wines are coming from, with the more influence from the lake and with the, let's say, more other soil types. I think you really can taste the difference here, what Zweigelt can do. Zweigelt is not a uniform variety which always tastes the same, it's easygoing. No, it's not. You really, if you work with the variety, if you work with the wine, and if you know what you're doing in terms of vinification, and this all of our wineries do, of course, you can make a difference, and you have a different style on a really high quality level, always outperforming on the delivery.
Next wine number 9, from Michael Allacher, Vinum Pannonia in Golz. Here you can see the label or the sticker which we have, for example. So if you have a bottle of Neusiedlersee DAC, you can have the sticker, or you can have it on the capsule, for example. Yeah. So these are the 2 different methods you can recognize our Neusiedlersee DAC Zweigelts, or the sweet wines, of course. So Michael Allacher from Golz. So this is the Wagram region. Limestone, again cooler in fruit, darker fruit for me. earthy character. Also on the palate, a darker fruit, but dominated by cherry, of course. Very full-bodied, so yeah, very tight.
Spice.
Tight. Neusiedlersee DAC, and also very spicy. So again, this black pepper, for example, you have on the palate. Yeah, so you can see for this wine, for example, I can imagine to combine it with. Don't know if you know this these little pigs we have here called mangalitsa. So we have, for example, so geschmort.
Roasted.
No.
Braised.
A type of meat.
Bruised, or?
Braised, yeah. So braised mangalitsa, for example, and that goes very well with Zweigelt, especially like this one. So it's really interesting to combine with a lot of different dishes.
Das haben wir so Pasta.
Hat schon lecker, die Folge.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we sum up the first red wine flight. What's the word?
Yeah, so as you can see on the slide, the Neusiedlersee DAC Zweigelt, the classical one, now it's 100% Zweigelt, let's put it like this, stainless steel or used oak. So in all the four wines we've got here, you didn't taste any oak in there. It's all about purity of fruit. It's about freshness. It's about drinkability, of course. The minimum alcohol with 12% is not a problem anymore nowadays. We achieve it. All of them have about 13, I guess, tasting 13 out of 5. The interesting thing here is that even the aging time is defined. So it's about minimum 6 months of aging. It's the 1st of March, the year following on the harvest, the earliest release date or the earliest date where they can ask for the quality number. You know, the Austrian quality wine, and of course, Neusiedlersee DAC is part of the quality wine, according to the Austrian wine law, has got the numbering scheme for chemical analysis as well as sensoric analysis. So there's a tasting panel tasting these wines and proving if they are fine, and they even improve Neusiedlersee DAC level if this is okay. So this is the classical category, let's say, for everyday drinking, a big broad combination with dishes, with food, from meat to pasta to fish. Everything is possible with this wine. Nice fruit forward style of wines, and a little bit of difference depending on the region where they're coming from within the Neusiedlersee region. If they are limestone, or so let's say the Wagram region, if they are from the Seewinkel, or if they are from the Heideboden region, which is more opulent, like the very first one from Mr. Scheibelhofer.
But what we can find, I think, in all four different wines is the fruit. The cherry fruit, for example, the softness of the wines, which is definitely a strength of this category. We can definitely we have the strength that the wines are can score in the basic line and win with a lot of fruitiness. So this is definitely a thing that can perform, Zweigelt can perform with.
Yeah, it's just uncomplicated pleasure for everybody, and the wine will please you all the time throughout the day, in the morning, in the midday, and in the night. So really, a nice glass of red wine in your hands to enjoy with a lot of different things out there, right? Okay, let's switch to the next slide.
Just one question,
Sure.
because according to the appellation, it's not 100% Zweigelt, I believe. It's minimum 85. Yeah.
Yeah, this is according to the Austrian wine law. If a variety is named on the label, it has to be at least 85%, and 15% could be something different. But I would say for most of the Neusiedlersee DAC wines, they are 100% Zweigelt, because it's about the variety.
You do not blend it with anything.
No,
normally not.
No, normally not.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, here you see I'm hungry, by the way.
Yeah.
Here you see the food combinations: stewed meat, roasted meat, Pannonian. Whatever Pannonian means, for me, it's always kind of bell pepper involved, in Pannonian food. Segatina, something like this. Yeah. Of course, barbecue, and on the very first picture you see on this slide, this pasta. Yeah. I just remember my times when I was selling Zweigelt in the US. The way how we promoted the Zweigelt, the way how they understood the Zweigelt was like, it's our pizza and pasta wine. Yeah, that's what we are saying, and it's really true. Yeah, it's a perfect match with spaghetti or even with pizza. Yeah, regardless if it's a meat or if it's a vegetarian, it always fits perfectly well. And yeah, one thing we want to mention on the right-hand side is about the drinking temperature of red wine. There is a saying that red wine should be drunk at room temperature. And this saying is coming from times when the room temperature has been like 18 degrees. Nowadays it's much warmer. And even with this very first flight we had on Zweigelt, I would suggest, please cool it down, chill it down to, let's say, 12, 13, 14 degrees of Celsius. It warms up anyhow in the glass on its own, yeah, but it's much more drinking pleasure than having it too warm, because then certain components within the wine are becoming too dominant, and you don't get the pleasure drinking this wine, which the wine is actually delivering. Okay, yeah. Next slide is going to be the reserve category on Zweigelt, and let's say it's almost the same, beside three different things. The one thing is the minimum alcohol level should be 13% of alcohol, ABV. The second thing is the minimum aging is 18 months, so it's coming, let's say, a year later, roughly, yeah, on the market. And some reserved Zweigelt DACs are coming even later than that. And then, of course, there was a big change in the law. Maybe you remember that it was named to be a Zweigelt-dominated blend in there, although dominating meant 60% at that time. Nowadays, we brought it up like with the normal category of Zweigelt. So now you can be almost sure that all of the reserve category is pure Zweigelt as well, like with the classical Zweigelt category. So yeah, Christoph, please walk us through the next four wines.
Thank you, Georg. So we start with wine number 10 from Seegut Lensch in Podersdorf. So we are again close to the lake. Now we change to vintages. I think all four wines are vintages 2017, as far as I know.
I think so.
Yes, it is. So now we have 17.
Yeah.
Quite interesting vintage, and you can also find a difference. It is, of course, more complex now. Also, for me, more spicier. This is aged in 200% in oak barrels. And extremely fresh. So you have very nice acidity on the palate. Of course, it's also the salty saltiness of the wine. Again, quite typical for Zweigelt. Very, very fruity. We have the cherries again, but in the reserve category, as far as the wine is aged in oak barrels, you have more dark cherry. And yeah, Markus Lensch won a lot of different Zweigelt tastings. And yeah, Georg shows me a big difference, of course, is the yield per hectare. So now we're talking about reserve category. And Markus mentioned in his fact sheet, we're talking about 3,500 kilograms per hectare, which is quite low. So I suppose this will be an old vintage, an old vineyard. We're talking about a single vineyard. It's called Seeweingarten. So I'm sure this is an old vineyard, and that's why the yield is quite low. Markus mentioned 100% new French oak barrel. Thank you, Markus. With very light toasting. So this is why this wine is very fresh, of course, and not dominant by the toasting. Okay. Wine number 11 is from Johannes Kummer, my colleague from Mönchhof. So we're again on the Wagram, again a single vineyard from Ried Zeiselberg. So here we have again vintage 2017. Mm-hmm. In the nose, we have more chocolate, for example, completely different. Some vanilla hints and also pepper.
Hungarian oak.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're talking about 60 years old vineyards or single vineyard. And Johannes decided to put this wine into small oak barrels coming from Hungary. Very interesting fact, because we are on the border to Hungary. So this year we celebrate 100 years Burgenland. So before that time, we belonged to Hungary, and that's why we have this historic matter, and the Hungarian oak is getting more and more interesting for us in whole Austria, I would say. Also, some wineries from Lower Austria, for example, try to put some white wines into a Hungarian oak. So it's really interesting.
Maybe I add something to the Hungarian oak. Out of history, Hungarian oak used to be the oak for winemaking back in the 19th century. Why? Because it has the highest quality. And then due to political reasons, the export of Hungarian oak stopped, and the French oak, like Allier, Troca, and so on, they took over, and they considered to be the highest quality. But now the trend is coming back to Hungarian oak, especially to the forest of Szemplen, that's the name for it, where the quality of oak, the fine-grained style of oak is coming back to the wines, and especially for the wines in the region. And now consider Neusiedlersee to be part of the Pannonian region, like Hungary. Yeah, they fit perfectly together. So it's again the saying that local style, local food, local traditions, they all fit together. And if you're here, you should try local wines with local food, with local habits. Then you're the best way served.
Correct. And the more air it gets, the more you feel this Cassis again. Ried-Seiselberg comes from Weiden. It's not from Halbturn, but for me personally, I have this Cassis again, so very, very fruit intense and very nice wine. We go over to wine number 12 from Jacqueline Klein. So we do also have women which make wines, and she is one of 18 months in French oak. She is one of quite a lot women we have in our region. Biscuit. Yeah. Georg tells me he has biscuit in the nose.
I concur.
Jacqueline comes from Andau, so we are. Is it correct if I say it's the heat pole?
Yes.
Is it correct?
It's Andau is quite often the village with the highest temperature throughout the year, and they go sometimes even beyond 40 degrees.
But nevertheless, there is also a lot of freshness in the wine, especially on the palate. You feel a warm character in the nose. Georg mentioned the biscuit. Nice tannins on the palate. So Zweigelt can also have tannins. Not only smoothie and soft tannins, especially in the reserve category. It can also have quite a lot of tannins, and the aging potential of Zweigelt. We didn't mention, or did you mention the aging potential? So especially for wines like this, of course, you can store these wines for 20 years and of course even longer. And so we have this aging potential, and that's why Zweigelt is having all that a good grape variety, a great grape variety needs. Jacqueline built a new winery and a new tasting room just last year. So here you have some impressions of the new tasting room, and also very successful colleague. Yeah, very, very nice and full-bodied Zweigelt. Coming from Andau, Neusiedlersee DAC reserve, so there is no addition in the label. Very nice wine. Then wine number 13. Again, a single vineyard wine. Single vineyard wine from Gors, Ried-Spiegelnüsse. Very, very interesting. It seems to be quite a cooler fruit, aged for more than almost 3 years in French oak barrels. So quite a long time. freshness on the nose. For me, it's a little bit closed on the palate, so it will definitely open with air in the glass. Again, from Gors, so also the fruit I mentioned is a little bit cooler for me. And here you also have very nice tannins on the palate. Very interesting. And again, this salty character just some seconds after tasting the wine.
One thing I want to add on this wine, and here you really can see the quality potential of Zweigelt, referring to the tannins on the palate. These tannins are clearly tannins from the variety and not the tannins from the oak. There's a clear difference in tasting these ones, and you can see that if you treat Zweigelt accordingly, then you will achieve this kind of wines. And putting a wine 34 months or almost 3 years in French oak barrels requires really, really healthy fruit. Yeah, and this is what Zweigelt can deliver. This wine will stay on for 30, 40 years for sure. I really bet on that one.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of power, and
it's power.
Yeah.
It's dark fruit in there for me. Then it has got the spiciness and the finish, the saltiness of the minerality, plus some herbal layer on top of it, a peppery note as well, and always this cherry fruit. This is consistent with all the Zweigelts we had so far. It's this cherry, this Amareno cherry, or even we do have in Austria one sweet, yeah, which is called Mangerie. I don't know if you know that one, but this refers somehow to this style of wine. So yeah, really, really nice. I would like to have a glass of this wine in the evening, just before going to bed. It would be a perfect sleep afterwards.
Definitely, yeah. And I think in the second flight you can see the difference of styles we have here, but we have one big bubble, which is Zweigelt and which is our region, and within the region there are the typical and different characters, of course, due to the different villages, I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what we can also produce is, of course, the sweet wines, which will follow.
Yes.
Just after sum up of the Zweigelt, of course. Okay. Georg.
Yeah, thank you, Christoph. So I think you all can read what's mentioned here in summing up Zweigelt, the reasons why you should go for Zweigelt. I think you just tasted it. The last 8 wines, they really told you what Zweigelt can be all about. It can be from everyday drinking nice glass of red wine to wines you need to lay down, and they can age for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and even more sometimes. So Zweigelt is a really versatile variety in different styles of wine, always having this cherry fruit consistently, regardless of the level, if it's a classical DSC or if it's a reserved DSC, and it's always a good class of wine. And one thing, especially what we discussed before, is the price ratio. So the value for money you get is really, really high. And all of this puts together the region and gives you the impression. And by the way, you saw the wineries, how they look like, how the tasting rooms look like. All of the wineries are more than happy to welcome you. Are more than happy to welcome you in their wineries, to have a taste, to have a chat and discuss about the wine. So everything is very, very warm welcome. So once you're here, please visit the region and yeah, try, of course, the local food with the local wines. Perfectly done. Good, but it was just mentioned that beside the Zweigelt, since last October 2020, we've got an addition in the Neusiedlersee DSC. And a lot of people know that this region especially was famous for sweet wines and still is famous for sweet wines. And for that reason, we introduced a new category, the sweet wine category for Neusiedlersee DAC, which splits up into two subcategories. In German, and I know all of you understand German, it's called Fruchtsüß or Edelsüß. And I will just go through with the next slide what are the definitions. So Neusiedlersee DAC for sweet wines, as said, sweet wine is still a category of wine which is looked after, and especially under the conditions which I mentioned in the very beginning of today's tasting, the Lake of Neusiedl, the saltiness, the botrytis, which can, which almost every year really occurs in here. We do have botrytis every year, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but we really designated this style of wine. Switch to the next slide, please. There we get the DAC Fruchtsüß or fruity sweet, if you want to transfer it. According to the DAC definitions, this can be done out of any white variety which is allowed under the quality wine segment. Yeah, so there will not be a red variety like Zweigelt or Blaufränkisch on the Fruchtsüß style of Neusiedlersee DAC. And if I talk about fruity, sweet, I'm not talking about botrytis. So we talk about the category Spätlese or Auslese. So it's a late harvest or a selection harvest, if I want to translate it wordly. Yeah, the minimum sugar level has to be sweet. So this is according to the Austrian wine law, 45 grams per liter. And of course, no addition of sugar is allowed. So the sugar which is in the wine is exactly the sugar which is left over from the must not being fermented to alcohol. Yeah. So there's nothing added on, nothing superficial, anything you could consider. No, it's the real sugar which was in the grape and has not been transformed into alcohol at the end of the fermentation. And maybe you will discuss about how this sweetness stays in the wine, because especially with this category, it doesn't stop on its own. So you have to do something to achieve the right balance between acidity and sugar level. And this fruity sweet category has to be released, or is not to be released before the 1st of January, the year after the harvest. So I will hand over the floor to you. Please walk us through to the sweet wine courses. 2 wines fruity sweet and 2 wines on the noble sweetness. Yeah.
Hi all, I am Hans-Michael Nittenhaus of the Gebrüder Nittenhaus winery, and I get to talk to you about sweet wines, a topic which is very dear to me because it's the first thing that I did with my father in the cellar, filtering sweet wine musts and wines, and racking sweet wine must, and beginning fermentation on the weekends after school. So yeah, happy to talk about that all day long. Sorry, first wine? First wine is the Ettel Traminer Süß. It's Spätlese. It is a very typical Traminer in the nose. It's got the typical rose petals and I think some citrusy notes, but not so lemony. It's more orangey, maybe some bergamot, which you know from Earl Grey. Yeah, pretty typical Traminer. Good intensity, and also on the palate. You have no overwhelming sweetness, but you don't just have a medium acidity, which is typically, or again for the Traminer, and the aroma is really lingering on your palate. Mm-hmm. The rose petals, very a variety that has long been in use for sweet wine making in the area, because the base must the base sugar from the must is already very high. It just needs a little botrytis to become a fruity sweet or a noble sweet wine. Yeah, and as Georg said, yeah, for a Spätlese or fruity sweet style, the musts don't stop on their own. At the sugar level that you want, oftentimes they are in full fermentation, so you have to put in some work to get them to stop. So you can achieve that by filtration, just get the yeast out, or which is done here, or you can do you can cool to slow fermentation, and then you can rack and add some bentonite for quicker lowering of the sediment, of quicker sedimentation, and just get it slowly to stop. It depends on the vintage, the must. You can't say just do that and be happy. That is, and I speak from experience, bound to fail. You end up with a sugar content you don't want. So yeah, adapt and overcome. And everything is very vintage specific with sweet wines.
So if you want, we can make a game here. If somebody wants to guess the sugar level of these wines, I think they have not been distributed so far. You can put it in the chat box, and yeah, we will tell you the truth afterwards. So if somebody wants to volunteer and guess how many sugar is in this wine, you're very welcome to do so.
So, to add. Let's go on with the next fruity sweet wine from a very renowned producer, Hans Tschida from Angerhof Tschida. And again, a variety that has a long tradition in sweet wine making in the area. It's Muscat Autumnel, which is not again Muscatella, which is not Muscat Petit Grain. It's more related, I think, to Muscat Alexandrie, and it is more perfumed, I think, than a Gelber Muscatella. It's not as fruity and it's fruity, but not. It's more perfumed. It's sweeter in the nose. It smells sweet. It isn't possible, I know, but it smells sweet, even if the wine is dry. But this one here is sweet. So again, citrusy, but I think more lemony, more a brighter citrus fruit, which is very typical for the variety. Also some tropical notes. I think also some passion fruit, and the residual sugar is very well balanced. The acidity is only slightly higher than with the Traminer, but it's the variety. Usually you don't have a lot of acidity with Muscat Autumnel, but you do have these exquisite aromas. Acidity we get in other wines, in other categories, and also again very vintage, very dependent on the vintage. Some vintages have acidity that makes the wines last for ages, and other vintages just have a medium acidity and make them only some decades for aging. But what I like about this one is the very, very clear nose. It's just so precise, so chiseled, and also the palate is so straight, and there's nothing distracting from this great aroma. Sweet wine grape, Muscat Autumnel is really a sweet wine grape I appreciate myself for in sweet wine making, because the aroma profile is just so intense and nice, and it just fits to the region, I think.
Yeah. May I add something in here? So if you taste this wine, it tastes, let's say, almost the same sweetness level as the other wine before, roughly. Although this wine has got 30 grams more residual sugar than the wine before. The big difference is 2 grams of acid more on this wine.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first one is 4.5 and this one is 6.4, something like this. So, and this is really the important thing, what we can do here in this region, to have the balance between sugar and acidity, so you don't taste the sugar. And the first one was 75 grams, and this one is 112 grams of residual sugar. And I like, especially with Muscat, the purity of fruit. And yeah, maybe to add something on the variety, Muscat Ottonel is one variety exactly in the middle of Petit Grain, so the gelben Muscatella, and the Muscat Alexandrie.
Oh,
yeah, there's three types of varieties. Yeah, and the one is the middle quality variety. Muscat of Alexandria is mainly used in Rivesaltes, in VDN wines in France, for example, and in some wines in Australia. Muscat Petit Grain is the noble, so to say, which I, as an Austrian, always say, Gelber Muscatella, Muscat Petit Grain is more the Almdudler side, so it's the grape, the herbal side, and a lot of nice exotic tropical aromas sometimes. And the Muscat Ottonel, for me, is more the grapey aroma. Yeah, it's like biting in grapes. Yeah. Sorry.
No. Georg is totally right. Muscat Ottonel is the wine smells like the grape, and if you press Muscat Ottonel, the whole press house is fragrant of the grapes. It's fantastic. One of the reasons I like the grape this much. What is the life expectancy of this wine? I think at least 10 years. Muscat aroma is very stable. It lasts a really long time. The acidity sugar balance is really good. I think 10 years is a safe guess. It could be 20, it could be 30. I'm not that old to assess this question properly. But let's go on to the next category of wines.
Yeah, one thing to add. Maybe you switch back one slide to Mr. Cheetah. There's a mistake in the slide I want to mention. On the lower right corner, you see Mr. Cheetah sitting with these medals of being the sweet winemaker of the year, which is a medal, a kind of certificate, and a big pleasure, which is granted by IVC. So it's in London, a competition, and you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these medals in here. It's wrong. Since last week, he has got the 7th medal. So he is the sweet winemaker of the year on the 7th time on the row. And he's the only one who really has achieved this title. So he's the one and only 7 times on the row becoming sweet winemaker of the year. Congratulations to Hans on this one. Okay, so maybe we switch to the next category, which is the.
Sorry, there was a question chat in Polish about the alcohol level and how did the fermentation was stopped.
Okay, on the Muscat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Muscat is 9.
the alcohol level is 9% volume, and maybe someone from the winery can answer how the fermentation was stopped. But I think it's normally with Angerhof Chiba is stopped with cooling. It's what I presumed from the winery. They always stop the fermentations very gently, and I think that makes a difference. If you either just cut off fermentation by filtration. If you slowly stop it, the wines are a little bit more elegant. It doesn't make all the difference, but it's little steps that make a great wine. Yeah, and also from the winery, the aging potential for the wine easily 15 years. I can sign that get this aging potential is pretty easily 15 years.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, or the interesting thing with sweet wines when they age, so taste sweet wines after 15, 20, 30, 40 years, they don't taste sweet anymore. The sweetness is still here from the physical level, so grams per liter, but the taste profile becomes much more harmonized and they don't taste sweet anymore. So please experience some vintage, I don't know, 69, 76, for example, 82.
Yeah.
These are really nice ones.
Yeah, today we're tasting pretty young wines. That is because the appellation for sweet wines is really young, but the wines age incredibly well and they become more harmonized by the year.
Okay, good. Then I suggest to switch to the next slide, which is the reserve category for Neusiedlersee DAC. It's the noble sweet category. So here we're talking about botrytis. Again, the very same with the normal one. It's all white varieties are permitted to this one. We talk about Beerenauslese and Trockenbeerenauslese. So the difference is the level of botrytis on the wines. Trockenbeerenauslese, and we are really happy to say that this region is one of the only regions who can get 100% botrytis on the wines. Yeah? Even famous regions like Sauternes don't get it always. Harvest by hand is mandatory. I think that's quite clear because you cannot harvest with machine and in Trockenbeerenauslese.
No,
you would damage everything, yeah, and you can't select exactly. Again, no addition of sugar, so it's the sugar from the grape, from the berry there, and the release date is a little bit later. So we talk about botrytis, and maybe you just make a few comments about botrytis. What's important in terms of healthy botrytis and not so healthy botrytis?
Yeah, botrytis is a funny thing. When you grow up here in the region, you kind of take it as a given that in most years, at some point, with most vineyards and varieties, botrytis takes over. Not always the good kind of botrytis, but always some kind of botrytis is present. So what you're looking for is really pure gray noble rot, just gray fungus that covers the skin of the berry and permits the water to evaporate. And usually this goes, in most years, this goes like this. You have very, very, very humid weather. The botrytis grows. And then you have a few days of sunshine. The air gets drier. And the water evaporates from the grapes, and they shrivel into raisins, into gray purple. They somehow become purple grayish raisins, and this is the stuff from which the great things, the great Trockenbeerenauslese are made of. And what you don't want is excessive wetness. So you don't want really wet roots. You don't want excessive rainfall in the fall, because then you get like more green and blackish fungi, which is not the good kind of botrytis or fungi that we want. And what we need for that is certain drainage in the vineyards. Vineyards where the roots are wet all fall, they don't develop good botrytis. You want the humid air around the berries for botrytis to develop, and then the drying off. That's what makes a great sweet wine. And the two following sweet wines are made with a lot of botrytis. One of them is One of them is very young, a Riesling 2020 from the Weingut Leitner. Can I get that slide, please? Thank you. Which is interesting because I know the vineyard, and it's a 100% Riesling, and I think the vintage 2020 really suited that particular vineyard, because with Riesling it's always a race against time with the stems, because the botrytis sometimes, and with Riesling especially, affects the stems and they drop. And botrytis in 2020 developed early, and therefore really great Bernoslese was made, I think. So in the nose, I think you have a very clear white peach. The aroma intensity is just medium, but I think that is the age or the non-aging that is showing here. With more age, the wines become more loud in the nose, more tertiary aromas, more depth, more warmth in the nose. When they are young, they are often really closed in the nose. When botrytis is present, fruity sweet Spätleses and Ausleses can be drinkable from a very young age. But with the noble sweets, give them some time to mature. So this is drinkable, nice, but in some years' time, it's going to be much better. On the palate, the acidity is makes the wine very fresh. That is a vintage specific thing. 2020 sweet wines had a lot of acidity. They are rather cool on the palate. I think they are going to last a very long time when aging. And you can feel the botrytis. You can feel that here some botrytis was present. When you swish the wine around in your mouth, you can feel the viscosity, between your tongue and the palate. You can really feel how the streaks that the wine is making. That is a pretty good way of determining how much botrytis there was present when harvesting. With the next wine, I think that is even more pronounced. That is a wine of our own making. It's a Trockenbernoslese, 100% from the grape variety of Scheurebe, vintage 2018. This one, so maybe a little bit first to the variety. Scheurebe is a very young variety. It is from Germany. It is very fragrant. It reminds me personally a lot of passion fruit and citrus, also rather orangey, bergamot. It's a very diverse flavor profile, but always very exotic. And in addition to the already very diverse flavor profile of the grape itself, this wine was fermented and aged in acacia barrels, in acacia barriques. So the wine, the must was filled in the barrels. It fermented there. It was raked out of the barrels. It was cooled out of the barrels, and after a few weeks, filtered and raked again into the barrels. So you have a very good integration of the wood. And also acacia makes very fragrant notes. It's not as sweet. It's sweet, but not as vanilla-y as a oak barrel. It's a rather floral. And on the palate, you can really feel how thick it is. I think when you swish it around between your tongue and your palate, it's a harder thing to do with a drier wine. It's just so nice and not warming, but it's a nice feel, and that makes the botrytis. The botrytis gives off substances that are making the wine more viscous. It's not just the sugar. The sugar does its part. 250 grams of sugar here, and 7.5% alcohol. And the taste with the in combination with the sugar also lingers on the palate. The combination is I think key here. The more sugar you have, the longer the taste lingers. But you also need the acidity to balance it out. Yeah, Georg, any words?
Yeah, for me, especially on this wine, it's really a very clean botrytis. So for me, when I smell in the glass, it's the English call it marmalade. So it's the orange marmalade, which I always have in my nose, which is a clear indication for botrytis. And the second thing is the high amount of glycerol on the palate, which gives me kind of indication. As you said, important is the acidity. For me, it's really, really fresh. It's a mixture of tropical fruits with orange. It reminds me a little bit of Christmas, when you had the orange skins on the hot oven plate. Yeah. So I've got even a cinnamon spiciness in there in this wine. So it's really nice, and I think this is really the high education level of the winery is producing this style of wines, clean wines, and I would suggest let's meet again in 50 years from now and taste it again. Okay, I'm not here anymore, but but maybe some of you are here. This would be really a delight. So this is a wine for decades, for sure. It will last very, very long, and maybe our grandchilds will once drink this wine and say, yeah, this was the vintage when my grandfather was born. And that's the way how they did the wines. I don't know if we're going to have botrytis in 50 years from now, because it very much depends on the weather conditions. But this region can produce, at least up to now, every year some kind of botrytis wine. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, but you can have botrytis wines from this region. And for me, it's the perfect, perfect finish. And you have to have a sweet wine, not only with dessert. I just can tell you, I tried it once in Sauternes. We went to a small restaurant. They were doing entrecôte, fresh entrecôte on the open oven. And together with the entrecôte, we had Sauternes, sweet wine. Although the sugar is a little bit low, it's 135, 150 grams, but the acidity, the alcohol is higher. It's 13.5 roughly in case of Sauternes. But it fits perfectly. So try meat, try some fish together with sweet wine. You will see it's working. So it's not just dessert, it's not just cheese, it's not foie gras, it's something else as well. So please try and do it. You will see how really a pleasure it is to do and to drink these sweet wines. Okay, so I think this is what we have planned for today in terms of tasting sweet wines. We've got another 2 slides which are it's kind of summing up a little bit of kind of messages from the region. You can read it on your own. We don't have to walk in there. You can even train your Burgenland slang if you want, because the lower says Norgal, the other one says Asirsa, so you don't have to pronounce it correctly, but it's written what it's meant to be. And I just want to thank to the audience for listening. I hope you enjoyed the tasting. Thank you to you both to present the flights, to present the wines, and share your insights with the people. And yeah, for me, it made a lot of fun, and I hope you had fun as well. You're still going on in tasting the wine if you have something left, and if not, there's enough you can get from the wineries, of course. Yeah. So, any question open now or later, we are happy to answer.
Right. Thank you very much, Georg. Thank you very much, Hans Michael. And just one question: do you really think there is a risk with the climate changing? There will be no botrytis in 50 years from now?
I don't know. I'm an optimist. Yeah. So I say there is no risk, because the region who is going to survive with botrytis is for sure the region of Neusiedlersee. Just looking around what happened in Sauternes the last 2, 3, 4 years, not so happy seeing that. Tokai, I was there the last time 5 years ago. This was pretty okay, but I think this Middle European region is really the ones which will stay on with botrytis for a couple of years to go on. And yeah, buy these wines, taste it in 50 years from now, then you still have some botrytis.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, I love your shirt, Georg.
Sorry? My shirt?
I love your shirt, yes. Weinburgenland.
Weinburgenland. And you know what?
I want one.
On the back?
I want it badly.
It's so small written, but we listed all the varieties planted in Burgenland on my back. So maybe we can discuss about that. You get one?
Yeah, let's talk afterward. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Of course, we are happy. We are happy to share those T-shirts, of course.
And any questions on the chat? Just not very talkative today, our attendees, but let's see if they are still with us, all of them.
Yeah, any case, whenever questions come up, please just forward either to us or to the wineries directly. They are happy to answer any question you might have. And yeah, we're going to share the contacts for the wineries again to all of you. So please don't hesitate getting in contact with the wineries. And we would be happy to see more of Zweigelt and sweet wine in Poland from Austria, of course.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have MBA impressed.
Yes. By the way, you are not allowed to spit the sweet wine because botrytis is a God-given thing, and if you spit it, you know what really happens. Yeah, so you blame God in a sense. So you just have to drink. And by the way, looking back to Maria Theresia, sweet wine was the wine of the empire, so to say. At that time, it was Tokai, unfortunately, what she drank. She got served some Wachhaus Maragd. She said, "This is disgusting. It's not a wine at all." She wants to have a sweet wine, but it's like a recipe. It's like a medicine. Every day, a small glass of sweet wine, and you don't get ill. And maybe it helps against Corona as well. I don't know.
I'm sure it will.
Okay.
Energized.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Greetings to Poland.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Passt.
Oh, punktgenau, das ist unglaublich.
Aber wirklich.
Ich weiß nicht, das funktioniert immer.
Ja, irgendwie schon, gell?